Testing, testing. Is it loud enough? Yes? Okay. Any questions?
That's a bit better. Francis, can you elaborate a little bit on the concept of a glimpse of our true nature in comparison to a more established experience of our true nature? Like, it feels like for me it started off as a glimpse.
I would say a glimpse is the access to our true nature in a timeless instant, like in a blink of an eye. Whereas being established means that the perfume of our true nature is present in the presence of perceptions.
So, you mean we're more consciously aware of the glimpsing in a way?
To be happy and at peace and
Yeah.
worry-free in the presence of perception.
And my initial experience was a glimpse, and I feel my path is to increase the amount of it's not time because it doesn't exist, but experiencing that becomes my normal reality or perception of reality. Is it a process?
Let me try to give you an analogy for that. In Germany, they have the bad Santa Claus. Okay? So, let's assume that you're a German child and you're afraid that the bad Santa Claus, if you misbehave, is going to hit you with der Peitsche, with a whip. Yeah, it's not a whip, but it's... anyway, they have all these details. We have the means to make you speak. And so you're afraid. And then you have a glimpse that Knecht Ruprecht, the bad Santa, is bullshit. Right? You have just a glimpse of that. Immediately, so that you see that in one single instant, right? In one single instant, you see it. That's bullshit told by my parents. So then, as a result, you are relieved of your fear of being beaten up. So the lasting relief of the glimpse lasts during your daily life. You don't need to close your door and to put something in the fireplace in your house to obstruct the fireplace so that the bad guy cannot come through the chimney, for instance. You stop to take safety measures. What? Through the door. He comes through the door. Yeah, he comes. That's bad. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But that's why you see that my German culture is not perfect, right? So that's the same thing. In one glimpse, you see that the belief to be a separate and limited entity is not real, and as a result, you get relieved. The relief is long-lasting. Now, after a first glimpse about the bad guy, Knecht Ruprecht, you may have second thought, and you may say, oh, after all, perhaps there's such a guy, especially when it gets dark at night. But eventually, when you are 20, 25, 30 years old,
Thank you, Francis.
Hi, Francis. At dinner the other night, you were talking with us. We talked about this life is like a movie.
You can sit comfortably. I see you.
Okay. We were talking about how this life is like a movie, and that we're here because we chose to be here, just so we could choose to go to a movie, and we came here to have fun. That's really the purpose of this life. I've been thinking a lot about that, which I like. That's very freeing, very inspiring way to think about it. Do we come in with friends? Do we bring friends with us? Do we come in with a team? Is that why when we meet people, we resonate with some people right away?
Nothing happens by chance. Let's put it this way. All the people we interact with, the friendly ones and the not so friendly ones, they are our own creation, in a sense. We all co-create the universe with all the animals in it, including the humans. So nothing happens by chance, if that's the meaning of the question. Nothing happens by chance, and yes. And the sweet friends and the like-minded friends, they are like if you live in exile, in a country which is a little nasty, where you don't have much freedom, and then you have a community of Americans there, and You meet at this bar to have some beer, and immediately you feel relief. You see of the stupidity outside, you know, what they do to women, what they do to animals, what so it's the same thing here when you meet like-minded friends. You came from the same country, which is not America, which is freedom. You see, it's different, but everybody comes from that country eventually, but most people don't know it. So then you have this common language, you know, having that you come from the same place, you know the streets of San Francisco, and you know the fog and the cold there, and the Shropshire-like conditions that prevail.
And when we
I start bashing Northern California because Rupert is planning to come there. So.
Thank you.
Francis, you sometimes said, "Let God run the show."
What?
Let God run the show. Let God run the show.
Yeah,
It's close to that what you just expressed.
But we participate also. We let God run the show is perhaps too passive. You see, because God runs the show externally, but God also runs the show internally if we stop believing that we are a separate power. So then we allow for God to run the show internally so that this body-mind is used as an instrument.
Mm-hmm.
You see, so yes. Perhaps that's what you mean, right? I guess that's what you meant, but I have to be careful not to be misconceived or misunderstood, like I do nothing and God does everything, so this body becomes completely passive. No, on the contrary. There is a joyful activity of this mind and of this body, and this joyful activity is when it allows for God to run the show through this body-mind.
That means follow your enthusiasm.
Yes, that means impersonal action. You know, to follow our enthusiasm is not the same thing as seeking pleasure. It is very different, because in fact, the body may be toiling, but we may be following our enthusiasm. And what I call enthusiasm is also the sense of love. Let's say you have a dear friend who is alone in a foreign country, sick, and needs you. So you take a plane ticket and you go there, right? Or you have a friend who has passed away and his wife is there and needs you, so you take a plane. It's not necessarily the funniest thing to do to fly, for a long flight and to rush but you do it out of enthusiasm, you understand, out of your heart.
Mm-hmm.
So it's different. To follow one's enthusiasm or interest is different from pleasure. But there is a sweet response within when we do that.
I know what you mean, yeah. It's sometimes when you do this hosteling, this backpacking stuff there, and you stay in the room, there's air conditioning, and there's a fan, and so normally nobody is feeling comfortable when it's too cold or the fan is too loud. So, and you stay there with 3 or 4 people, and so it's always very. It happened in one evening. There were three people around me, and the fan was full power on, and the air conditioning was working on 19 degrees or something like this. It was on a quite low level, and it was silent. And suddenly, it just showed up. It was coming from a peaceful place to ask, feels everybody comfortable with this? And then the girl above me told me, could we switch off the fan? And everyone else was said, sure, we don't need it. And could we put up the air conditioning a little bit? And everybody said, sure, it's no problem. And she was just, now I'm able to sleep. She was just, and I felt that some years ago I would be proud because I did it, the idea, and this was just, I was happy because I felt her relief, just to enjoy. She could have a nice sleep, perhaps.
Yeah.
And that's all, yeah. Yeah.
But it's like vocation. So some people, they have the vocation to do charitable work in uncomfortable places with difficult climate, and so for the body it takes a toll, but when it comes from their heart, that's what they want to be doing at that moment, you see. So that's...
I can understand this. When the peace is there, you can do it from this peaceful place, and then it's fine. Then you just do it out of love. Yeah.
So, for instance, MDs who do that, because because also they love doing their job, and they love doing the job in circumstances where they are very needed and where they can take full responsibility, they can make all the decisions, and at the same time they see the difference they make. They're saving the lives of children, young people, etc. But also they enjoy doing their job, so they do their out of a vocation. It's very different to do that because I don't want to go to hell when I die, so I want to have some good karma in my karmic account, I don't want to be in the red on my karmic account. That's the difference.
Hi, Francis. This is just a thought that came up in the meditation. I just thought I'd check it out with you. But, the thought was that is time, not time, in consciousness, does the borders of time, state stop? Do they just drop off? Is there just one plane of, because I hear you say, or people say there's no past or future, but in consciousness, do the borders of that plane drop off and it's just all as far back and as far forward as this is just all existence?
The feeling is when you look back, unless you have a specific need to do so, but when you look back or you look forward, you see only light. So you of course, if you need to remember something, or if someone tells you about something, provided you are not too old, because then you may not remember, right? But then you can go there and say, and remember, it doesn't deprive us. But in other words, the factual past in memory remains available, but the psychological past is erased. The past of grudges, traumas, regrets, to live without regrets and without grudges.
In consciousness, like what we are, is there just one plane though? If I drop, have glimpses of not human experience, just being, but you can see backwards and forwards, but it's all just on one plane. I mean, it just is. All of life from eternity to eternity just is all in that space in consciousness.
Don't project in your mind extraordinary circumstances.
Okay.
It's just the ordinary circumstances that are just perfect.
Yeah.
In other words, in wisdom, we don't have special goggles to look through the walls and to look inside the skulls of people, for instance.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? So the way we see the universe is the same as before. The way we see the past and the future is the same. But as I said, the psychological element we attach to the past or to the future, fear and desire, is not present. Regrets are not there. Bitterness is not there.
When that pops up in meditation like that, is that just the mind, or is that a glimpse of something? Is that just the mind being active?
When what?
When it shows up in meditation, like that, the thought just showed up in meditation. Is that just a thought?
When what shows up in meditation?
You know, just sitting there in meditation and just watching the borders drop off time, and it just go off and be a plane, and it just is. Is that just the mind just give me something to think about, or is it just a showing, or is it just nothing?
There is no point in thinking about anything we have experienced which is phenomenal in nature. Anything which has a beginning and an end. However, if an event that happened in a certain context, in a certain place, at a certain time, under certain circumstances, has revealed to us something which is always true. That's different, because the messenger is not important, the messenger is a moment. But what the message was revealing, that which is always true, is important. Especially if that which is always true refers to our true nature, to consciousness. And actually, only something that refers to consciousness could possibly be always true and everywhere. Everything else is a relative truth, and therefore it is not true everywhere and always. The French philosopher Montaigne used to say, truth on this side of the Pyrenees Mountains, he lived close to these mountains, error on the other side.
Thank you.
So this relative truth depends on the place and also depends on the time. But absolute truth is always true everywhere. So that which, when something of this order gets revealed to us, even if it seems of little significance to the mind, we have to be careful because that's important. On the other hand, a big display of fireworks that don't deliver something which is everlasting, which is always true, has almost no importance.
Thank you.
Liberation is a subtractive process, not an additive process. We remove the false. At the end, only the true remains. We don't have to bring the true. The true is already there. All we need to do is to remove the false that covers it.
Francis, I guess it's been a very long time ago, maybe 12, 13 years ago. I remember picking up a book. I can't remember I didn't read the book, but I think the name was Leo or something Harding, something about having no head.
Douglas Harding.
Douglas Harding, that's it. I didn't read it, but I looked through it enough where what I think I recall is he was in the Himalayas walking and he envisioned not having any head. And at the time I said, the guy must have been on drugs and this makes no sense to me. But I may end up looking for that book again. Is that in a similar fashion to what we're calling the tantric tricks? I mean, I'm sure he didn't go through life. Just that glimpse of the shift of looking, just seeing it in that timeless second. I mean, same as what we're doing here in the yoga. Is that?
Yes.
Would you point in the same thing?
Douglas was very visual. He was an architect by profession. And he was trying to share this experience through using visual gimmick. He was traveling with a suitcase full of pieces of cardboard, like a tube, so he would. He had his way of communicating, sharing his experience that he had of having no head. So that may, of course, take someone to this experience. What is important is to have an approach that addresses all the aspects of our experience. In other words, all the perceptions, the sound, the visual perceptions, but also the bodily sensations, and also the conceptual realm, the realm of concepts, so that we have to be satisfied and at peace. The sage Admananda Krishna Menon was asked the question, when do I know I am established? And he says, when the thought doesn't destabilize us, doesn't take you away, when the perception doesn't take you away, and when the feeling doesn't take you away. You see? Yeah. If you are intellectually stable, but then you feel I am separate. All of a sudden, your stability goes away because your feelings seem to be trumping your reason. So you have to align the way you feel with your body and with your senses with that which you have understood through reason. So Douglas was proceeding mostly from this visual. So he would give access to the experience through the visual. But for those who have not read him, it's a very interesting the discovery he made all of a sudden is that, so he was, yes, traveling in the Himalayas, and that he had no head, so we usually don't understand what it means, but when he describes his experience, instead of my head had been replaced with the world. You see, and if we look at our experience at every moment, we have no head. You see? Because we can see here, we go up, and then there is a world, yes.
Hi, Francis. Okay, this is more of a comment, but it's also, I'm just curious, how you would respond. So, you know how here we are playing, loving the drama, like, why else would we be here? We're experiencing contrast and, it's exciting. Sometimes we like dark things. It seems to me that a lot of the drama comes out of human relationship, like with jealousy and what's the word? When you want to hold on to somebody else and don't let them go. Possessiveness. Yeah, thank you. So, and we are just where we're at as a species on the planet, evolving, whatever, and we practice mostly monogamy. And so I'm thinking, in a sense, when I'm feeling very aware in the lucid in this experience of living, and I'm thinking, well, yeah, I'm very unconditionally loving. I feel love and I feel attraction to a lot of different people, and that's fine. I know different people like to live in different ways. Some people prefer, even if it's not based on fear, to have a loving, monogamous partnership between just two people. But I'm wondering too, like, here we are experiencing oneness, and so much of our culture is revolving around this drama of possessiveness and jealousy, and that to me seems like it's very much from the ignorance. And so it seems like maybe as people get more and more in touch with this sense that we are in almost a play or a movie that we're playing, and it's that we all can love each other freely and be more authentic with other people as we just naturally interact with people without this fear that we're gonna get, you're bad, you're shameful, you cheated, all this stuff that all the movies love to dramatize. So it's just an interesting thing that's kind of just a curiosity about how you would, regard that subject matter.
It's a long chapter.
I know.
First, this identification between love and sex. I mean, sex is a need, is about instinct, right? And I don't see why we wouldn't identify love and drinking or love and eating. It's a natural function. So this identification. Now there is something else in the relation between human beings. There is a gender complementarity. So the attraction of the opposites. But there is also another form of complementarity which is more spiritual, if you will, more refined, which is that the feminine and the masculine qualities are different, and they kind of seek each other to complete each other, if you will. If one has 20% of female, 80% of male, and there is a natural seeking of the opposite, 20% of male and 80% of female, to have 100%. You see, it's simplistic. And that is regardless of sex. You see, it's a different, more subtle, and in addition to that, so we can say that there are physical chemistry, sex, there is affinities, you see, this complementarity of qualities, and then above that there is spiritual attraction, which is love. So in love, we see our oneness with the other. So any relationship which is not grounded in love is not worth having. So I'm an advocate of divorce, because most relationships are not grounded in love. And so it's good to try up until you find one which is. So love is the most important element, but it doesn't mean that these are also important. If you have this lady who is very spiritual, goes to India, and there is this Avadut who is also very spiritual, these men who walk around naked. But there is such a clash of culture and affinities that a connection is not possible. That's the way things are, you see. So what is in order of priorities, the spiritual affinity comes first, then the quality affinity second, and then the sexual affinity. When we are young, sexual affinity comes first. That's normal. It goes with the hormones. And now, regarding the being monogamous it's a free country. It's we are all different. And there are people, they like to be on their own. And people who like to be on their own are more likely to be not to be monogamous. You see, because it goes with the territory, because when they are with someone, pretty soon they want to be on their own. You see? So then they're on their own, and then the hormones build up and they want to be with someone. You know? The problem with that, I mean, they get what they want. They are kind of monks too, and nuns, you know. And other people, they enjoy the deepening over time of a relationship. They're done in the level of qualities. They don't like to be on their own. They are more social in a certain sense. So there are all kinds of configuration, like sexual preferences. We are all different, like the flowers on the meadow. You see? And also, there are other cultures, not too many though, who live on different patterns. There are culture in some Pacific islands where for instance, the woman goes with all kinds of men, and it is the brother who plays the role of the father and takes care of, I mean, gives the
I've read about that, yeah.
For the children. And apparently there is less aggression in there. Right? Now, coming back to something else. In all cases, the possessivity is the result of ignorance, right? In all cases. Because when you love freedom, you respect freedom in your partner, just as you expect your partner to respect your freedom. There is Khalil Gibran in this poem says, be in your relationship like the pillars in the temple, you know, that the distance between each other is important, to respect the distance. So this possession is a result of seeing the other person as an object. And as an object we own. And there are cultures like that of women are considered less than cattle, you know, like my goat is worth two wives. This type of mindset, you know, it's terrible. Or the children are sold, you know, to a suitor. I mean, there is total disrespect for the consciousness in the being. You see, so in that sense, it's bullshit to say that all cultures are equal. In the same way that it would be bullshit to say that Ramana Maharshi and Hitler, it's the same consciousness. You see?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
It wouldn't make sense on the relative plane to equate Ramana Maharshi and Hitler, saying, you know, after all, they have the same consciousness. There is no difference. You see, there is an area in which there are differences, and there are differences between cultures, and some cultures are more, at least in their ideals, in their laws, in their customs, they are more in line with truth. With all its defects, you know, the cultures that we have inherited from the age of enlightenment, in which there is respect for all opinions, in which there is freedom, in respect of the individuals, respect of the freedom of expression, etc. It's a rare occurrence in the history of mankind. And it is in line with the truth, because, you know, that we have these meetings here is very unique in history, perhaps in India, yes, but everywhere else in the world, Francis would have been burned at the stake. You see what I mean? It's not allowed. It's too dangerous, what I'm saying, and so that this sharing of our understanding, it flourishes in a culture in which there is respect for the freedom of people and for the freedom of expressing their views and freedom of assembly, freedom. All of these freedoms are very important. And when you see in the Constitution, you know, the pursuit of happiness, it's so beautiful. You know, it's so beautiful because that's what it is about. You see? Well, enough politics.
Thank you for having these meetings.
Francis, is happiness non-phenomenal?
Yes. Next.
Yeah, thanks.
Hi, Francis. Today we were talking about process of self-enquiry, and we were talking about watching the news, say CNN, and there are so many negative thoughts or judgments that come out, and we were trying to apply this self-enquiry to that event, and we were sort of confused, and we thought we'll ask you.
What do you want me to say about CNN?
How do I get out of the phenomenon and get into reality or consciousness when I'm watching all that on TV?
You mean all what is happening in the world, or are you referring to the way CNN?
The politics and Trump business and polarity.
I don't want to offend the Trumpers, and I don't want to offend the Trump detractors. My ideal president would be one who has no ego. Eh?
That's not possible.
King Janaka.
A few years ago, somebody asked you, how come you're not running? And you said, I wouldn't even have 10% of support here.
But I'm still,
But
I'm
if
affected.
I had to vote, I would try to make my determination. Where is I would vote based on the least ego.
Right. But more than that, it's in my mind, the anger comes.
What?
Anger comes when somebody's not behaving the way you want to behave. And that happens all the time when you watch the news. So do you constantly do the self-enquiry and say, this is consciousness and he's part of, I mean, maybe
I
not
watch
him.
it like a very interesting spy stories. I mean, can you imagine, all the ingredients, with the Mueller investigation? I mean, there are all the ingredients. The CIA, the FBI, the president, the Russians, the Manchurian candidate, the corruption, the money. I mean, I wonder what they are going to find. I am expecting the end of the movie. That's very interesting. I mean, it's fascinating. I mean, we couldn't imagine of a better plot for a movie or for a book.
Yes, who is the scriptwriter?
You see, I mean, it could be a book, 2,000 pages, it's because there are subplots, there are all.
So just watch it as a movie and
What?
just watch it as a movie.
That's not what it is, huh? But my ideal politician would be the one with the smaller ego, regardless of party affiliation, and regardless of any ideology. Because ideology, once they are a good, what my teacher used to say, a good ruler is one who is competent, to be. You need to know your business in order to be the CEO of a corporation, and then to be impersonal, and not to act to be pragmatic, practical, to take each situation in this context and not coming from memory, not coming from principles. And what you see, and the problem is that on the left and the right, people seem to be always coming from principles, defending principles. It's only in the center, which is becoming non-existent, that intelligent people say, okay, let's deal with the situations. We are not, politicians normally, politics means the management of the city. So the manager should be qualified and should work in the interest of the shareholders. That's the idea. We are the shareholders. So they should work in our interest, not in the interest of this group or that group. Or good luck with that.
Hi, Francis. Although it doesn't make any sense to my mind, I keep coming back to this idea that the phenomenal world is eternal. And, maybe that's the question, is this existence, this world, this something that we get to participate in, is it impermanent, falling away, transient?
That's very interesting, your question.
Eternal?
Okay. So your question is, I cannot get rid of the notion that this world is eternal. That's your question? I didn't catch your first.
The question is this something that I can perceive, this existence, this life, this world, is it impermanent or is it eternal?
Everything in it is impermanent.
Every object.
Everything is impermanent, everything.
Everything, yeah.
But it is permanent.
Okay.
The
yeah.
question is, what is it? What is this it? You see, everything we see is impermanent. These mountains has not always been here and won't be here. This earth has not always been here. This universe, physical universe, has not always been here and won't always be here. So the question is, yes, there is something, there is an it, which is everlasting and which is not changing. But what is this it? So the question is, what is it? Because somehow, when we project the permanence of something in this world, we project always something which is going to be impermanent. For instance, we say, after my body dies, other bodies around me will still be alive and they will generate children and there will be mankind on the earth. But that's a very short-sighted view. At some point, you know, the sun is going to explode in a beautiful supernova and not much is going to remain of the earth. So this intuition we have that there is something permanent is true. The question is, what is it which is permanent?
What's the answer?
You could ask yourself different questions and ask yourself, do you know, like little exercises to solve on your own, like could there be two things that are permanent, absolutely permanent, for instance? So
my sense is whatever is perceiving this moment right now is eternal.
There is a reality, yes.
And the question comes from noticing that which is perceiving this moment is not separate from that which is perceived.
That's true.
Which is what loops me back to this sense that this world
they share a common reality, and so the reality that is perceiving that is also the reality of that which is perceived. But that which is perceived really is, yes, that which is the reality of that which is perceived, meaning that which is really perceived is permanent, yes. But the appearances,
I'm not sure if I'm following, because it sounds like we're saying that which perceives is eternal and that which gets perceived is not eternal. But that sounds like a duality, so I'm not sure what I'm not seeing.
well, if what we mean by that which is perceived, for instance, our perceptions, of course our perceptions are impermanent. They change from moment to moment, right? And if there is a world out there that we perceive through our perceptions, and that, and if there is a a one-on-one relationship between our perceptions and the world out there that we perceive, right? In other words, if our perception of the world are a true representation of the world, in other words, if to each element of the world corresponds an element of our perception, since our perceptions are impermanent, the objects we perceive in the world are also impermanent, right? So, if there is something out there that we perceive and which is permanent, it is not the objects that we believe are there. It is not even the physical world we believe is there, because that is always changing. The mountains have not always been here, as I've said, etc. It doesn't mean there is nothing permanent out there. But that which is truly permanent out there, and that which is truly permanent in here, is the same. That's it.
So because the map is not the territory.
No, I was kind of, we can make two assumptions regarding the world. Either there is a world out there, or there is only the images of it in our mind. Okay? If the world out there is, if there is no world out there, and if there is only the images in our mind, then of course the world is impermanent, since the images are impermanent, right? Therefore, the only thing which is permanent is the reality that perceives the world. That's the first assumption. Second assumption, there is a thing out there, there is a world out there, what Kant called the thing in itself, das Ding an sich, the thing in itself. If there is a world out there, right, and if our perception of it, for instance, the images, are a true representation of it, it means that to each element in our perception, what we see in our mind, corresponds an element of the world out there. And since our images, our perceptions of the world are impermanent, it means that the objects that the world seems to be comprised of are also impermanent. The mountains, the computers, the people, etc. In this case. So, it doesn't, so whatever is permanent in this world is not the objects that we perceive. That's the point I'm making. And whatever is permanent, I call it, in the world, I call it the reality of the world. And so then we have two realities, the reality that perceives, the reality of the world. But in order for these two realities to truly interact, there have to be only one reality. So then the reality that perceives and the reality which is perceived out there are the same reality. You see, the beauty of this approach is that it doesn't exclude the world out there. It is not a purely idealistic approach, which is too simplistic to see there is only mind. We have to be open to the possibility that there is existence independent from mind, but not independent from reality, you see. Reality encompasses all the forms of existence and is one. And we have access to it through our consciousness. Our consciousness is the presence of reality. It's our reality. In our center, we are at the center of the universe, at the very center of the universe, you see.
Thank you.
Well done. Happy Valentine's Day, and let's celebrate tonight with the show.